This time on KEI Fabrication.
Okay folks, what you're witnessing here is a fabrication of a set of slapper bars. I wonder what we can call this version of them. Well, if I was James from Cletus McFarland's channel, I would call him the Traction Master 9000.
Hide all the women and children. All the grinding's done. Time to clean the garage. Well folks, I just came back from the scrapyard. So I ran up to the scrapyard. Well, we're up here at the junkyard. Well, we're back in the junkyard.
Okay folks, I just came back from the scrapyard and I found some material for slapper bar traction bars. I'm gonna cut this to length and I'm going to put it on the spring pad that's already on the bottom of the truck, and I've already got rubber snubbers, so we'll do a whole video on building a set of traction bars. So another drag week prep item that we are addressing that's on the list, and this certainly made it a little less expensive and cut my fabrication time way down. Hide all the women and children. Okay folks, what you're witnessing here is a fabrication of a set of slapper bars. I wonder what we can call this version of them. Well, if I was James from Cletus McFarland's channel, I would call him the Traction Master 9000. So anyway, that's what we're building. The key components to building slapper bars is you want to make sure that the rubber snubber is exactly in the center of the spring eye bolt. That way you're not putting undue stress on the leaf spring itself, and you're transferring that energy directly into the chassis. I'm going to shoot for a 1/2 inch gap when these things are fully installed and the truck's at ride height. So I've got a 1/2 inch piece of shim stock, and then I'm using the stock shock bracket and spring pad to do this. You can see I'm going to need to put a little filler panel in here. The dilemma is I have to kind of mock up both sides because we have the shock in the rear over here, so that's going to potentially mean whatever shim I need over here to fill up the gap, I'm going to have to put it in the front over here, and hopefully it'll just be flush against this. So I just got to figure that out and makes both sides match. You know, this is 1960s technology that we're applying to this, but it works. So because I don't have a whole lot of fabrication time to put the Slide-A-Link system on this, I would have to completely re-engineer the spring eye bracket and all that stuff. I'm just don't have the time. The truck isn't making a ton of horsepower right now, so these will make the leaf springs job a little less severe, and hopefully make the nose a little more active and transfer some weight back here on the wheels. Alright folks, what we got going on here is I just took 2 layers of Federal Safety Yellow off of this tubing that I'm going to use for the traction bars. I believe that was part of a guard for either a factory or a machine. So that fortunately the yellow was old and brittle and it came off relatively easy. Some of that new enamel just turns into a bunch of goo and you just end up spreading it around. So I'm going to use another sander just to take off the final layer, and then I want to make sure that these are 100% prepped, because the next time I put them up into position I'm going to tack weld them to the spring pads, and then I'll remove the spring pad and I will weld them permanently. Alright, so the only thing I'm trying to do, I scuffed it with some 80 grit, and I'm going to paint these satin black so they're kind of stealthy. I still want the truck to be a sleeper, so I don't want those bright yellow Lakewood type colored ones or anything like that. So first priority, sand all the junk off so I can weld good structural quality welds, and when they're on the bench I'll dust them with a rattle can of satin black. Alright folks, it might not look like it, but there's a lot going on here. I've got the traction bar tacked in place, making some use of some cardboard aided design here. This is a gusset that I'm going to use to make the spring pad reach and also prevent some twisting and such of the traction bar. I've got a 1/4 inch shim out here. I decided to go with a 1/4 instead of a half. 2 reasons. One of them is to keep this as far away from the ground as possible. If I need more hit or more aggressive, I will trim the snubber like I talked about. This is a safety hoop. It's a 3/8 square U-bolt. Grabbed it from the hardware store. I'll make a bracket for here. This is a safety. If for some reason you happen to bypass the neutral gate and hit reverse, this traction bar will go down. The potential is for it to dig into the ground. This prevents this. Should probably have just a little gap the way it's adjusted. So this will prevent the spring from doing wrap up in the wrong direction. So under heavy braking and things like that, it'll prevent this bar from coming down and digging into the track. Those were basically a feature that was incorporated into these after years, because some of these are digging into the track. They were causing the car to roll over. If you get a flat tire, the good news is you can see the bottom of the rim here and the bottom of the traction bar. and none of this will protrude below the rim. So if I got a flat tire, it'll go down to the rim. It will not dig into the track. So anyway, that's going on. I mentioned that I was going to lower the truck. I'm going to put a lowering block between the spring pad and the spring stack. They're all ready to go. Originally, I don't know if you followed the video or not, I was going to put a 1 1/4 inch lowering block here. I mentioned when I did the front end lowering, I wanted to see what the rake of the truck is. It's a little too high in the back. I can lower this 3/4 of an inch with the addition of this lowering block. You can see that I've got a milled pocket in here to sit on the spring center bolt, and then there's a hex head, socket head cap screw threaded in, and this will act as the drive pin to locate the spring pad that's welded to the rear end housing, and then the rear end won't go back and forth. I've got enough thread engagement on my U-bolt to accommodate the 3/4 inch, so I'm good that way. And I've got my new KYB shocks at the ready here to go in and replace these. So those of you who watch me go through the list, the drag week list, these were the 3 things that I wanted to accomplish all at the same time: the traction bar, the shocks, and the lowering blocks. So I'm real close to getting the driver's side all mocked up, and once I like that, I'll move over to the passenger side. Alright folks, the Traction Master 9000s are tacked in place. The next step is to drop the raise it up on the lift, take the spring pads off, do the final welding. I've got a bracket to make back here. The shock, they look different because the shocks are staggered. One's in front of the rear, one's behind the rear, so the way the traction bar attaches to that spring pad is different from the passenger side to the driver's side. So alright folks, I got the driver's side traction bar all welded up. You can see that I added gussets. This was the bracket that we made in the rear. I added gussets. I just wanted to point out something real quick. When you're making small gussets for a particular application, it would be real easy to just make a sharp point here and come up. Let me tell you why there's a better way to do that. You can see that I've added probably a 1/4 inch of material here and then put a radius in it. What that does is it adds a little bit of section width to the gusset, so it provides a little more strength. And more importantly, if you had a sharp point here, when you got welding along and got down to the bottom, you would just blow the corner of it away because there's no material left by the time you come around. So this gives you plenty of room for the width of your weld, and at the end, after it's all welded, not only do you have a stronger gusset because you added section thickness back here, you've got a nice radius. I just tuned it up on the belt sander, and you've got a pretty neat looking gusset. You can see I did the same thing back here. I added, the 1/4 inch, and then after I got done welding, I still had a bunch of material left, and I had a nice area to wrap the weld around the bottom. So you can see I fabricated the safety strap on the traction bar. I just measured back from the center of the spring eye to where this should be, so it's in a neutral position on the leaf spring. There's nothing crazy happening like a second leaf ending where this begins, or the leaf stack clamps or anything in the way. So this will go around the spring, and this will provide that safety for, like I talked about, if you happen to get on the brakes hard or accidentally go past the neutral gate into reverse, it'll prevent this front edge from digging into the ground. Well, I did the 3 things that I wanted to accomplish with this aspect of the project. Put the traction bar on. Got the lowering blocks in. And the new KYB shocks are in. One of the things I did was I added this triangular gusset here. It's such a long cantilever from the point at which it clamps to the spring to the rubber snubber. I decided to add a triangular gusset, and I just sliced a piece of the box tubing, trimmed it to fit the spring pad. You can see I added the gussets for the shock bracket, and so it should be a pretty stout piece now with a minimal amount of deflection. So here's a picture of the gusset of the other side. So just trying to add some strength. I'm looking forward to testing it out, but we got 2 inches of rain falling today, so it's going to be a while before I could ever get to the point where I've got the camera mounted underneath the truck again, and I can see the interaction of the slapper bar with the coil spring. Alright, on to the battery box.
Next time on KEI Fabrication.
You can see exhaust turnouts are on the list. Now that I have the components, I hopefully can make that happen.